So thank you all for joining us today. This is our second to last conversation in the series of community partnerships. Today is Campus Community Partnerships, coordinating a comprehensive trauma-informed response to sexual violence. Thank you all for joining us. Just a little bit of housekeeping before we start. Most folks are familiar with how to use Zoom, but here's just a little reminder. We are going to have some polling and some text chat questions. So we'll ask you to just leave your responses in the text chat like you have been doing. And then there's a few poll responses where you should be able to just add your response and then we'll review them. We are again recording the webinar today. So please feel free to leave your camera off if you don't want to be recorded. We are actually going to be turning our cameras off soon as well. So feel free to sit back and relax. You don't need to be on camera if you don't want to. We do have a closed captioning option. So if you look down at the bottom of your screen, there should be a selection where you can enable the captioning if you'd like. And we are going to start out with a poll. And Shelby, are you able to launch the poll? We're going to ask where you're joining us from. So a 2-year college, a 4-year college, trade school, rape crisis agency, a dual agency, so rape crisis and domestic violence, or other.
I think I have to be co-host. Oh, there it is.
It looks like, I think I launched it. Shelby, I can handle that. Thank you so much for your help. But it looks like most people have responded to the poll, Priscilla. So we have quite a few people from either 2-year or 4-year colleges. We also have rape crisis centers or dual rape crisis and domestic violence agencies. And then do you have someone who selected other? And we'd love to know what would best describe where you're joining us from if you did have to select that other category. So I'll go ahead and close that, Priscilla.
Thank you, Ashley. And just a reminder, this is the second to last in the series for our collective power to eradicate sexual violence. Our next webinar is going to be on July 15th. It's creating partnerships with labor to prevent workplace sexual violence. So please feel free to join us. I will drop in the chat the link for you to be able to register for that. And then in the fall, we will actually be having a follow-up series about our blueprint. So we'll talk a little bit more about that later, but we have a community blueprint for partners, which is a roadmap to create partnerships and collaborations between RCCs and then other community partners and organizations and sectors that are aligned with our anti-sexual violence movement. So please feel free to share this information with your networks. Again, we're open to all community organizations. And the fall series will go over how to implement that blueprint and how to make these partnerships work. Also a reminder, our 2021 virtual National Sexual Assault Conference will be held August 4th through 6th. Registration just opened for that. If someone can drop the link for that in the chat. We do have scholarships available. So please feel free to go to our website, look that information up, register, or apply for a scholarship. And then today, meet your facilitators. Ashley introduced herself a little bit, but I'll let her go in a second just to give you more of an idea of who she is. I'm Priscilla Clausen. I am a project coordinator here at Valor. I use the pronouns she, her, and hers, and I will be presenting today along with Ashley, and we have a guest speaker named Angelina. Ashley, did you want to go ahead and introduce yourself real quick?
Sure. Hey, everyone. I'm Ashley Klein Jimenez. I'm the Director of Prevention for Valor US, and my pronouns are she, her, and hers. I've been with Valor, oh gosh, it'll be 6 years in September, but prior to that, I worked in local rape crisis centers in the Southern California area and had the great opportunity of partnering with both 2-year and 4-year schools during that work. So happy to be here and talking about campus with you all.
Thank you, Ashley. Angelina, are you able to pop on camera and say hello real quick and introduce yourself? You don't have to go on camera if you don't want to.
Hi, Priscilla, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Angelina Alvarez. I am a prevention specialist. I work for an organization called Valley Oasis, and I partner with Antelope Valley College, which is a local community college, and I look forward to speaking with you all today.
Great. Thank you so much for being here, Angelina. And then we have Shelby here for tech support. Shelby, can you go ahead and introduce yourself as well?
Sure. Hello, everyone. Good morning. My name is Shelby Phillips. My pronouns are she, her, hers. And I'm actually the project and communications coordinator here at Valor. And I will be providing tech support. So if you need anything, feel free to send me a chat.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Shelby. So we have one more quick poll for you. How familiar are you with our work at Valor US, formerly known as CalCASA? Are you very familiar, slightly familiar? You've heard of Valor, but you don't know much about it. You're not very familiar, or you're clueless until now.
And I believe I have launched the poll. Yes, okay. I see
Great.
people are responding.
Thank you, Ashley. And Ashley, did you want to go ahead and tell us a little bit about Valor US?
Yeah, so it looks like, most people are at least slightly familiar with us. So we are formerly the California Coalition Against Sexual Assault. We are still the state coalition, but we also do a lot of national work as well as our state work. And our goal is really to advance equity and end sexual violence. And, we really believe that we can't end sexual violence without ending all forms of oppression and advancing equity in our communities and in society. And so that's what our projects and our programs seek to do. And we'd love for you, if you aren't doing so already, to find us on social media and give us a follow. We are often posting about upcoming events, web conferences, resources. And so that's a great place to kind of stay up to date on our information.
Great. Thank you, Ashley. And it looks like a lot of folks are familiar with us in some capacity, but we do have someone who's completely clueless until now. And someone who's not familiar. So that's awesome. Thank you so much for joining us. Hopefully, you can join us for some of our future presentations as well. Oop. Sorry, y'all, my computer's frozen. 1 second. Okay. So a little bit more housekeeping before we get started. Just a reminder to take care of yourselves during this webinar. Like we said, please feel free to keep your camera off, do what you need to do, walk around, stretch, get some water. And we know that this content that we're presenting is, can be really heavy. And sometimes that can trigger feelings of concern or, give you a physical response. So please feel free to take care of yourselves in whatever way you need to. If you want to step away or turn your sound off if something gets difficult. And you can always feel free to reach out to Ashley and I for support. So our learning objectives today, we're going to talk about our community within the college campuses. And we're going to identify how sexual assault can impact college students, as well as strategies for meaningful collaboration between rape crisis centers and college campuses. We're also going to identify community level outcomes resulting from leveraged collaborations and partnerships. So what's the purpose of this series? Actually, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and turn off my camera. I forgot to do that part. And Ashley's in a rural location, so I know that her camera stops working at a certain point sometimes. So we're going to go ahead and turn off our cameras as well. Okay. So what's the purpose of this series and the blueprint? So we know that all of our issues intersect with one another, and we wanted to bring attention to how sexual violence shows up in other areas of a person's life and vice versa, particularly through this series. Sorry, I'm getting a lot of background noise today, so hopefully that's not too cumbersome. So importantly, organizations or community leaders, we don't exist outside of our communities, right? We know that we're a part of them, and building relationships between the people who are working and living inside different sectors can strengthen our connections to each other and those in our orbit, right? Causing kind of like a ripple effect. So stronger communities and positive relationships can actually protect against violence and other negative health outcomes. So throughout our web conference today, we'll be talking about campus partnerships and how anyone on campus can address and respond to sexual violence in their communities, especially with the help of a local sexual assault program. Inside the community blueprint that we're going to release in the fall, you'll find practical tools and action steps for creating and building partnerships across sectors with the purpose of responding to violence. We've included in this document detailed information and step-by-step processes to help build relationships between sexual assault programs and other sectors. Like I said, it's going to be released in the fall, and we're going to have a bunch of webinars where we'll go through the blueprint to guide folks through the process. Ooh. Ashley, did you want to go ahead and take this next slide?
Yeah, absolutely. So we wanted to just talk a little bit about the context of sexual violence on campus. And you can go to the next slide, Priscilla. So when I started at Valor 6 years ago, we were kind of a year or so into this moment where campus sexual assault was really being looked at and talked about and taken seriously in a way that it hadn't been previously. And a lot of that, I would say, was thanks to student activists. Students, survivors, were really trying to hold their institutions accountable. And so you all, might remember some of like those early images of student activists really trying to call attention to what had happened when they had reported a sexual assault on campus. And so, there's been so many things that have happened over the last 6, 7, 8 years. And so Jon Krakauer wrote this kind of like groundbreaking novel called Missoula, Rape and the Justice System in a College Town. If you haven't read it, I really recommend it. I listened to the audiobook and, it's tough, but it just really, kind of paints a picture of what campus sexual assault, all of like the nuances and the context. And then many people saw The Hunting Ground. And I'd love to know if you've seen The Hunting Ground or read Missoula. Let us know in the chat. I just love to get a sense of that. But The Hunting Ground, was another kind of moment where it was on Netflix and it was being shown on like primetime TV. And so people that wouldn't necessarily have sought out looking at sexual assault on campus were learning about it. You couldn't really not hear about it. We know Chanel Miller, the Brock Turner case happened, and that was such a huge moment. And then Chanel Miller came out publicly and shared about her story and wrote Know My Name. We know that and Rape on Campus and It's on Us has been doing a lot of organizing around campus sexual assault. And again, like so much of this was kind of student led, but really advocates on institutions had to get behind and support these students. We also know that there have been a lot of changes with the last administration to Title IX. And so this has impacted many institutions and advocates and survivors on campus. Know Your 9 has been a great resource for students to kind of learn about what Title IX is. And now we have a new administration that has really said that we're going to prioritize, again, looking at how we respond to sexual assault on campus. And so there's just been so much happening every day. There's something new, and it's really been like this for years. And that's kind of the context that we find ourselves in right now. Priscilla, if you go to the next slide, I pulled out a couple of quotes from an article, and I'll share the link to the article in its entirety. But these are some quotes from student survivors. And so Emma Folkowicz says, "This is a problem, and if I don't say anything, it's going to keep happening." And Priscilla, if you'd go to the next slide. Andrea Pino said, "When I filed my complaint along with 4 others, I was ostracized and I was ridiculed by my university. In many ways, I gave up my opportunity to ever have a normal college experience after I came forward." And if you'd go to the final slide in this, Priscilla, I'd appreciate that. Chanel Miller says, "Some meant to start a movement. Others just fought to find some modicum of justice. No matter their intent, each of these survivors started something big because they reported their stories of sexual assault." And so again, and I'm going to put the link, it's from a Teen Vogue article, but it just kind of like highlights that so much of what we're talking about today has been centered around experiences of survivors on campus. And Priscilla, if you go to the next slide, another point I'd like to highlight, and I think it fits in really well with this idea of a community blueprint, is that college students are not just dealing with sexual violence on campus. Something that we've been hearing a lot during the COVID-19 pandemic, and even prior to the pandemic, is that college students often have a hard time just meeting their basic needs. And so this is an article about how housing insecurity has really been impacted negatively. There's been an increase during COVID-19 for college students. And so we know that these other issues that students are facing also are risk factors. They're connected to sexual violence. And so it's so important that we kind of think outside of the box in terms of partnerships. How do we partner to think about housing insecurity, knowing that that is related to sexual violence? So I just wanted to put a little point in that as we move through, that there are so many other issues that are really connected that we can be connecting to one another on. And Priscilla, I'll pass it back to you. Priscilla, if you're talking, you are on mute.
Sorry, y'all, my computer has been freezing. I was like, oh no, it's not letting me unmute. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the scope of the problem. According to a recent survey by the Association of American Universities, the survey was more than 181,000 students. Campus violence rates really actually are remaining high right now. And these percentages of students reported that they experienced non-consensual sexual contact involving physical force or the inability to consent or stop what was happening. So 26% of undergraduate women and 7% of undergraduate men and 23% of undergraduate transgender, genderqueer, non-binary students had reported experiencing non-consensual sexual contact. This study also showed that there was a 3% increase in the rate of undergrad women who experienced non-consensual sexual contact. The study was based on 21 of the schools that took the campus climate survey in 2015 and then again in 2019. So we actually saw a 3% increase. So not only had things not gotten better or stabilized, they were actually getting worse. So Ashley, did you want to go ahead and talk about community partnerships a little bit?
I sure do. If you go to the next slide. So I like to start off by thinking about like, what is a community even? And I like this definition that says that a community is a group with diverse characteristics who are linked by social ties, they share common perspectives, and they engage in, there's a typo here, in joint action in geographical locations or settings. So sometimes I think that, you know, campuses, especially like a four-year school, where many students live on campus, they are kind of like their own communities, but they do exist. They are located within a larger community. And so I think that that is just a fact that even campuses where students spend so much time on campus, they still access the outside community, right? They're still part of this larger kind of place where people are linked by their social ties, and they're engaging in activities and events in the same setting or location. And Priscilla, if you go to the next slide, a couple of years ago, Valor actually did some work around responding and preventing to campus sexual assault. And what we found was that there's really kind of these three prongs, these three things that need to exist for an institution, a campus, to be able to be the most effective in addressing and preventing sexual violence. And so the first thing that needs to happen is there has to be institutional commitment, and there has to be effective policies in place. But outside of that, there really has to be trauma-informed services, collaboration and engagement, and not just between campus departments, but also with with community partners. And then this idea of comprehensive prevention. And we won't spend too much time talking about comprehensive prevention on this particular web conference, but if that is something that you're interested in, I would be happy to share some resources around that. So we found that these are kind of like three things that need to exist. And so today we're obviously focusing on the collaboration and engagement piece. Priscilla, if you go to the next slide, you know, one thing that speaks to me is that when we think about how do we implement trauma-informed policies and practices on our campuses, collaboration is kind of one of those practices. It is a trauma-informed practice. And if you think about it, in order to be trauma-informed, we come to an understanding that people experience trauma in different ways, and that our paths to healing can look very, very different. And so being able to give people choices and options is really a huge piece of being trauma-informed. And so bringing people with different experiences and expertise and identities and voices and resources to a table helps open up those choices. We also know that collaborating with folks, bringing different folks to the table, bringing different perspectives, helps us see that there's not just one way to be a survivor, right? Survivorship looks different. Trauma looks different for every person. And so that collaboration piece can be really, really important instead of just staying super insular and only seeing one perspective. And Priscilla, if you'd go to the next slide. So this is actually kind of an example of what a collaboration centered around trauma-informed choices with community partners looks like. And so this is out of the University of Michigan, Flint. And this is their sexual violence response and resources kind of like mapping. And you can see that, and I think like many campuses have something similar, but the reason why I wanted to highlight this one is because it does show that the options are not just on campus, right? If you look under mental health and physical health, there's lots of, and this might be a hard slide to see, so I'll make sure you get the link in the chat so you can pull it up yourself. But you'll see that there are crisis counseling centers. There's a local rape crisis center listed. And so it's really highlighting that idea that survivors need choices, options. And so here is what that looks like when we are in one another. If you go to the next slide, Priscilla, many people are either part of this, they have this on campus, or they're familiar with coordinated community response teams. But basically, you know, like I said, many students, whether they live on or off campus, they are engaged in wider neighborhoods surrounding campuses, right? They represent different communities that all come together to make up a campus. And so a coordinated community response team brings together representatives from the campus, but also from the community to really make up this multidisciplinary team that can bring different perspectives, that can bring different areas of expertise. And it also really helps to strengthen the options that students have both on campus and off campus, right? People are talking to one another. We know what exists. We know what we can offer students who may need some of that support. Priscilla, if you go to the next slide. Sometimes, so CCRT is the acronym for Coordinated Community Response Team, but it's really about, and I'm excited for Angelina to share with us, because Angelina really believes in this idea that it's about building relationships, and that's really behind what a coordinated community response would look like between campus and community partners. That when organizations truly collaborate, they develop these durable relationships that are sustainable. They involve shared decision making. They involve common goals that are mutually agreed upon. I don't know about you all, but I have been in so many kind of like collaborations or partnerships where we do some things together, but it doesn't ever really go deep, right? It doesn't have a lot of these characteristics that you're looking at on your screen. There maybe isn't active and ongoing communication. It might just be like when there's an awareness month coming up. I don't really know what my role is or what's expected of me. So in a coordinated community response, we know why we're being asked to the table. We know what we're being expected to bring. We also know that our expertise, our traditions, our appreciations are all being celebrated, right? Like these things make us special and why we need to be part of this response. And so a coordinated community response team is one way for campuses and communities to really partner together and bring some of that to the campus space. And so if you go to the next slide, Priscilla, some of the people that folks would want to bring to a coordinated community response team on campus would be like housing folks, so RAs, it would be campus administrators, it might be professors, folks who are interacting with students, you know, one-on-one in the classroom. Students themselves would be great representatives on a CCRT. Could bring the counseling team, the medical team, legal services. But really, I think when we're thinking about who should collaborate with responding to sexual assault on campus, we have to think about what are our goals? What do we hope to achieve? And then who do we need on board to be able to meet those goals? If you go to the next slide, Priscilla, think with those questions in mind, we would think about the same things when we're looking at off-campus partners. And that might be a rape crisis center, it might be a domestic violence agency, it might be legal services, it might be health and mental health care. You know, I recently was talking with a campus about, we were doing a training on cyber abuse and technology facilitated abuse. And what would really help the campus is to be able to partner with a community organization that provides legal services and really understands cyber abuse and technology facilitated abuse, because so many students are experiencing that, especially during COVID-19. So what are kind of the context of the things that are being seen on campus, and then who are those people that you need to bring in from outside of the campus? And Priscilla, if you go to the next slide, you know, we are obviously think that partnering with rape crisis centers is really important and necessary, but there are community partnerships beyond rape crisis centers that are absolutely as important. And so thinking about like culturally relevant organizations, organizations that focus on immigrant rights, disability justice, disability rights, LGBTQ+ organizations. There's so many more. This list is not exhaustive. But again, it's asking like, what are our goals and who do we need at our table to meet those goals? And I am really excited because I want to now transition over, and Priscilla, if you go to the next slide, hear a little bit about what a campus community partnership looks like in practice. And so we're going to bring Angelina back. And Angelina, I'd love for you to just share what that looks like for you and the campus that you are working with.
Absolutely. Let me know if you guys can hear me okay. Does it sound good?
You sound great.
Okay, perfect. So welcome everyone. Again, I'm Angelina with Valley Oasis, and I have to give a shout out to the amazing college campus that I work with, which is Antelope Valley Community College. It has been a long journey with them, but we have developed this great collaboration, partnership in all aspects of not only prevention, but in advocacy. So if we can go to the next slide, please. One of the things that's really important to start off that partnership is an MOU, which is, you know, modem of understanding. And what we did is we sat down with the college campus and said, you know, we'd really like to partner with you. And the college was, you know, a little apprehensive, like most institutions are. And we really talked about how we are not there to tell them they're doing anything wrong. We're there to help on the things that we specialize with. And so in our MOU, we really broke down how we would be partnering together, what the expectations are. And so there was a clear understanding in going into this partnership, which was really great. One of those things was open communication. We had to go off of blind faith and trust on our communication. One, the campus had to trust that we are not going in to get them in trouble. And we had to trust that the campus was going to relay the information to us accordingly. So at the end of the day, we have to remember one thing, that campus is worried about what their liability is. And as an RCC representative, our level of concern for liability goes against, you know, for the survivor. So we have two very different understandings of where our liability lies, which is really important for us to understand. So communication, we developed one point of contact for the campus and one point of contact for Valley Oasis. And our point of contact on the campus is Dr. Jill Zimmerman, and she is the Dean of Student Life and Services, which is an excellent person to have our point of contact on. She's been on the campus for more than 20 years. She, you know, is involved in students, partakes in everything that goes on. So she really had a good understanding of what the campus culture was, which is something that I needed to understand coming onto the campus. And part of that communication was really seeing what activities were going on campus, how could I help out, just really learning about the campus. So I opened up communication, not just with the dean, but I reached out to different departments. I worked out to, the biology department and the math department, and really tried to go in and meet with the professors and see if I could come in and talk with the students or even educate them during their their staff meetings, which was really important, which leads me into classroom and campus education. We brought the education portion to the campus. Not only were we advocating for prevention on campus, but we were also informing the students and the staff of what their rights were. Should anything happen, how do we come together, and what if you know someone? And the services that are offered, aren't necessarily just for students. Students know someone who don't go to that college, and so, hey, my friend at this college was sexually assaulted. Are her or his rights the same over there as they are over here? And so not only are we educating students on our campus, but we're providing them information that they can share with their friends off of campus. The same way with teachers. Because our campus is a 2-year campus, we call it a very transient campus. You're here for 2 years, you're gone. Some students, are here part-time, some students are full-time, and the same thing with our staff. We have some full-time staff, we have some adjunct staff. So when we're educating our staff here on our campus, they're also educating other staff and students on the other campuses that they teach, which is a bonus. When we go into our education for the classroom and campuses, we make sure to tap into our marketing department. And we are fortunate enough to be able to utilize the campus marketing department, and we put out bulletins on our campus. Excuse me for a moment, I have baby brain and I can't think of the name. The electronic sign out front. We put information out there, during Awareness Month. We make sure that any education or trainings that are coming up are posted with dates and links. We have campus TVs that are up around the campus that also has the information. Education is also going out to the clubs on campus. We put up flyers inside each classroom, and we also put information inside the bathroom stalls. So we are inundating the campus, students, and staff with all kinds of information. With that, we go into policy. One of the things that we really had to sit down and have a heart-to-heart with on the campus was policy. We can educate all we want and we can advocate all we want, but if policy isn't there, students and staff aren't going to trust what's going to happen because there's nothing in writing that says that they have these rights. And so we were really fortunate to have amazing advocates on campus for the work that Valley Oasis is doing. And we developed a team, and we have been working on policy change for having a CCRT on campus, for having prevention education as part of the curriculum. We currently work with a program called First Year Experience, which takes the oncoming students, first or second year, or longtime returning students, and we work with that department, and we kind of give them a training course for 4 hours on Title IX. We do peer learning. We talk about policies and procedures, where we do a scavenger hunt to find out where resources are on campus, all relating to sexual assault, domestic violence prevention, and advocacy. So there are different places on campus that students can get different information, and we make sure that everybody gets that. Next slide, please.
Angelina, I just wanted to pop in really quick and just share that something that I was thinking about as you were talking is that, so you are, an example of a campus community partnership, but you're partnering with so many other like departments and entities on campus. So there's like partnerships within partnerships. And I think that that's so important, and it shows how well you have been kind of like ingrained into the campus culture. And I think a lot of that is because, you know, and you said it, like you had to learn what that campus culture was and what it was like to work in a system like an institution. So just wanted to share that.
Thank you. And that's really true. So when we talk about collaboration, I had a hard time when I first came on campus. I come from the RCC background, right? We're here to advocate for victims, and, you know, I speak this language, and so you should speak this language. What I had to learn is every campus has its own culture. It has its own language. Academia has its own chain of commands, things that you do and don't do. Everybody, you know, has a role. And so going onto campus originally was a struggle. And not only just because I had to learn, I call the college campus a foreign country. You know, when you go into a foreign country, you don't necessarily know the language or the culture, and so you have to learn it. And that's how it was on the college campus. And so in order for me to really collaborate with these different departments, we had to have, they had to know that I was there not just for my job and I'm gone. They had to really trust that I had a buy-in. So I was going to football games, I was going to art shows, I was going to Club Rush, I was, you know, sitting in on meetings, any meeting that anybody would take me in, so that I can learn and kind of see who's who and how the culture works on the campus, not only with the staff, but with the students. It's two different cultures within a community. And so that learning that language, learning that culture really opened up the doors for me to collaborate with different departments. That collaboration has been a godsend, really, because I can't even say don't think. I know for sure I would not be able to do what I do as successfully as I do without the support of different departments, different staff members, different students on the campus saying, hey, you know what? Angelina just did this presentation. I think it'd be really beneficial to have it in, you know, our women's studies class, or, you know, in our health development class, or, you know what, we have table talks. And so Angelina, we'd really like you to come in and talk with the students, or we've got a teacher development meeting and we'd like you to come in. So that collaboration has really helped because I did learn the culture. And another big part of what I really, really push and try and get people to understand is you have to build a relationship with the campus. It's like building a friendship, you know, it's thank you cards. It's, hey, I'm checking in on you. I heard you were out sick. How are you doing? Oh, you know what? Your grandson just graduated high school. That's amazing. You have to be able to develop those relationships. And that's what keeps the partnerships and the collaboration going and this movement going on campus. Once that happened, Dr. Zimmerman was amazing, and I am now on campus and have my own office. And so I am co-located not only at our Rape Crisis Center, but also at the college campus. Students and staff know where I am. They know that everything that comes into me is confidential. We now work for the fact that we have this program called The Advocate, where you can report stalking or domestic violence or sexual assault, and it's confidential. And it right away gets sent to me, and then I'm able to reach out to the students and advocate for them. And one of the great things is, even though we don't have an official CCRT on campus, we do kind of have our own little CCRT, which is the dean, one of her staff members, and campus law enforcement. And so if anything comes their way or they hear of anything, they right away bring it out to me. And I'm able to sit down and meet with that student or their staff member and say, hey, this is who I am. This is what I do. everything that we talk about is 100% confidential. Just because I'm on campus, I don't report to the campus. They don't hear anything, they don't know anything. But let me give you your options. And these are your options if you do report. These are your options if you don't report. And I walk them through the process. And as I walk the students through the process, depending on which way they go, the nice thing about developing these relationships is if a student does decide to report, I'm able to do that warm connection of saying, you know what, Jane Doe is going to report. We're going to do both law enforcement and campus reporting. And we have our on-campus deputy that I work very closely with. I call him in, let him know, you know, this is the situation, and we sit down together. The student reports what's happening. Once the deputy takes the report, we then do a warm connection with our VP of Student Services. And it's never just pushing the student and saying, here, that's where you need to go. Because of the partnerships that we have developed and the relationship over the years, I'm able to make that connection. And so when students come and report, they know it's a safe space. They know they're never left alone. They know that even if they have to go talk to the VP on campus, that I'm right there with them. And because of those relationships built with the school, I'm not being pushed aside saying this isn't your place. I'm very much welcomed in that role and brought to the table on a lot of things. On a previous presentation where Dr. Zimmerman was able to join me, she expressed that it's really great that even though I'm not, quote unquote, an employee of the college campus, I'm welcomed in as one of their own. And so it allows the students and the staff to feel safe to come and speak to me. One of the things that's really unique about our campus is we also have a high school on our campus where those high school students attend college courses. And we have a satellite university campus on our college campus. And so I had to learn the policies and the laws and the regulations relating to minors when reporting, because when they are attending a college class, they are technically considered a college student. But how does Title IX, relate to minors, and how do we handle that? And, what's the liability on that? And so the college really appreciates when I do have information about those things. Really, one of the things I can't stress enough to you is build relationships. Build relationships on your campus. Get to know people. Make yourself available and learn the campus culture and language. If you are not willing to do those three things, building that partnership with college campuses makes it very difficult. You kind of have to humble yourself and understand that even though you are the expert in the field that you work in, you are not the expert of the culture and the language on that campus. And so you have to be open to learning, and it's a constant learning process. And just be open to it and be personable. So that's really what I have to say on the college campus. Please reach out to me if you have any questions. When you work with students, one of the resources that I use is the Avid for Higher Education book, and it gives you a lot of tools on how to work on listening with the intent to listen, how to educate and make it fun. So I really use the Avid book a lot, but you can see events that we have going on, things that I'm hosting or doing some trainings on our Valley Oasis webpage or on our social media. So thanks, guys. I hope that was helpful on working with college campuses.
Thank you so much, Angelina. And yeah, if anyone in our audience has questions for Angelina, please feel free to use the text chat, and we can bring Angelina back and get some answers. But thank you also for being willing to share your contact information if folks want to contact you offline. Angelina, I think, and Jen said Angelina is a great asset to Antelope Valley College, and
Thanks, Jen.
that's so great to hear. That's great to hear, Jen. I think something else, Angelina, that I just want to say is, a lot of time, there have been a lot of resources put out over the years for campus sexual assault response and prevention, but a lot of it is really geared towards four-year schools, and community colleges kind of get left out of that conversation. Maybe it's because community colleges were like the only, I don't think I would be here talking with you all today if it wasn't for a community college. But I just think that they're so important to this conversation. And they're such an integral part of an actual community. And so I've just really learned a lot from you over the years, how you've approached working with yours. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I sometimes feel like community colleges have been the stepchild of this movement. And it's very heartbreaking to me because community colleges are generally pretty transient. So you don't always have that strong connection of feeling a part of or having those relationships or student services that you do on a four-year campus. And so I feel it's not more important, but definitely shouldn't be left out in the dust, because if you don't have that connection to your campus, then these individuals that have been victimized, how do we get them to that survivor state? How do we get them those resources that they need if they're not connected to their campus?
Absolutely. And, the thing that I touched on earlier about, like, there are so many other issues that are connected to sexual violence that students are experiencing. We know that students at community colleges are experiencing those things at even higher rates often, especially when it comes to like food and housing insecurity. And so, yeah, having those resources available is just incredibly important. So thanks again, Angelina, and please feel free to put any questions you have in the chat, and Angelina, keep an eye over there. But Priscilla, if you go to the next slide, we'd love to know from you all, what other ideas do you have for collaborating, whether you're a campus person or you're a community organization? What are things that you're doing? What are ideas that you have? It doesn't even have to necessarily be specifically about sexual violence, but just, maybe you're working on trying to increase access to affordable housing with schools. We'd love to know what ideas you all have. So feel free to share with us. And Priscilla, if you go to the next slide, and Angelina, I think that this kind of underlines what one thing that you were saying, and that's that survivors on campus really deserve to have options. They deserve to know what their options are. And sometimes those options can be like buried in some policy manual or on some webpage that's really hard to get to. And so having a partner who's physically on campus that can actually sit with someone and talk through their options, I think is so important. And so I just can't highlight enough that these partnerships are so critical to providing those options and choices for survivors. And I hope you like my graphic. I think those are M&Ms in all colors that you can imagine. Priscilla, if you go to the next slide, the other thing that Angelina, I really heard you talk about was that campus community partnerships provide strong support networks for students, whether they are, living on campus and really connected to that campus, or if it's a more transient school and people are coming and going. A lot of times, and okay, maybe I shouldn't say this because I don't necessarily have data to back it up, but from like my experiences, a lot of times people kind of settle down in the communities where they go to college. And I think there is data to support this, that community college students are often from the community where the community college is.
Mhm.
And so being able to have those strong support networks, whether they're on campus or they're off campus, is just so useful as we move through life. You know, just because an experience happens to us when we're on campus, it doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to be ready to seek support while we're still a student, right? So knowing what your options are even after you've graduated can be really, really important. So if you go to the next slide.
Sorry, Ashley,
No,
just to
go
touch
for
on
it.
that, it really is one of the things that I value from the staff at ABC is they have become very familiar with me. And they now will say, you know what, I don't know the answer to that. Here's Angelina's information. Let me walk you over there, or let me, you know, put you in contact with her. And so we're really starting to get away from giving out misinformation, and they're pushing students to come and talk to me because it is, you know, a safe space. It is confidential, and we can talk about, you know, okay, you know, if you're not ready to report on campus, here are your options for off campus. And, you know, these are your options for if you're not ready to even talk about it right now, and let's say 10 years from now. One of the good partnerships that we have off of campus is we have a great relationship with our district attorney's office locally. And so we talk about victims of crime, and there's a grant that victims get if they've been sexually assaulted or victims of domestic violence, where it helps with, you know, travel expenses, you know, to doctor's appointments, or costs for therapy, or changing your locks and things like that. You know, so those are resources off campus. And then we talk about the resources on campus, and having that relationship with the dean of students really makes it easier, because then we can work with professors to get, you know, extensions, or we talk to students, you know, about doing an incomplete instead of a withdraw. If we can work with professors and say, you know what, hey, you know, something has happened, are we able to allow the student to take an incomplete and come back next semester and finish the class, or however it may be. And we are really getting a lot of professors that are willing to work with us in that regard, so that students aren't failing, and we are doing what the college is meant to do, to educate and to get them to graduate. They can't graduate if they have all of this trauma. And if you're stressing about getting an F in class, you're not working on yourself. So having those relationships and understanding what resources are available to you on and off campus is so important to each individual's success at survivorship.
Yeah, thanks, Angelina. And something that you just said reminded me too, that when we're thinking about like, what are those shared kind of values, you know, or even like shared end goals, right? Like we want students to graduate. Well, from a campus perspective, like that's what a college is there for, right? To produce folks that then go on and have degrees. But from a standpoint of someone working in the anti-sexual violence field, we know that a protective factor is actually like a college degree, or having that. And so, you know, there's a shared goal there to support students so they are able to finish school, and so that the trauma that they've experienced doesn't have to derail that, if at all possible.
Exactly.
And yeah, so I really appreciate that. I want to, Teresa says, I've used Window Between Worlds Healing Arts workshops to build safe spaces for students. Oh yeah, Window Between Worlds.
That's really good.
Gosh, yeah, it's a great program. Thanks for sharing that, Teresa. And Angelina, you know, this slide that's up right now, you talked about this too, like that transparency. When we're able to collaborate and kind of count on our partners, there we can have a level of transparency that like we don't know the answer, we don't know that, but here, let me connect you with someone that does, or let me connect you with someone who can talk you through like what could this look like, you know, here are your options, what could this look like. Priscilla, if you go to the next slide, I think another important reason for these partnerships is because we know that sexual assault doesn't happen in a vacuum, that folks experience sexual assault differently based on lots of things, including our identities. And so one person, one campus should not be expected to solve everyone's problems, right? Or meet everyone's needs. That's just not, it's such a complex, nuanced issue. And so being able to have these partnerships and these options in the community can really help expand what those options are for students. And Priscilla, if you go to the next slide, I'm going to try to put my earbud back in and hopefully I don't lose you all. So this kind of brings us to this idea that if we're able to look at responding to sexual assault on campus through a multidisciplinary lens, it's able to provide students with lots of different places to go, because we're bringing people who have different levels of accountability, right? Angelina, your role on campus, you are confidential. That might not be true for an administrator on campus. And so we need both, right? We need both. We need people who have different expertise. We need people who are connected to the anti-sexual violence movement, and we need people who are connected to what it means to be an institution for learning. We need to understand those intersections of ethics and legal restrictions. You talked about this a lot at the beginning, Angelina. And then, and we just said this too, that we have different motivations for wanting people to have a good college experience, but it's the same end goal, right? Everyone deserves to be safe and to be given what they need. And so that brings me to, Priscilla, if you go to the next slide, this idea that we really need a comprehensive approach, and we cannot be comprehensive if we're not bringing in our campus and community partners together. Angelina, were you going to add something?
Yeah, and actually it kind of ties into the comprehensive approach as well. One of the things that I've learned when I learned the campus culture and language, I was able to kind of prep the students for line of questioning that the campus may ask if they report to the campus, and say, you know what, hey, the VP is going to ask A, B, and C. And it's not to make you feel like ashamed, and it's not to make you feel like you did anything wrong, but they have specific line of questions that they have to ask legally when they file their paperwork. So I want you to be prepared for this. These are some of the questions that may be asked, and kind of give the students an understanding of what's coming. But it also allows me to educate not only campus administrators, but law enforcement on how to better ask those questions that are necessary to ask for report filing and legal documents. So learning what everybody's role is and how those roles connect really allows you to become a better advocate, because when you're advocating for individuals, you need to know what's coming their way and kind of help guide them through it the best way that you can. And so that's why I think it's really important, when you do learn everybody's roles and their languages, it really helps you become a better advocate, because you can prepare the individuals you're working with.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing about that, because it's so true. It's so important. And I think that, when I worked at a rape crisis center and was partnering with a campus, I had a really strange role, because I was also a student at that campus. So I was like, on one hand working with them, and on the other hand, I was a student. But it was, like you said, it was two completely different experiences. And I really had to learn that just being a student, just going to college did not set me up to actually be able to effectively partner with a campus in like a professional sense. So thanks for sharing that. Priscilla, if you go to the next slide. So, again, we'd love to hear from you all about, what are some of the partnerships on campus or off campus that you're currently engaged in. And I guess that's, if you are from a campus, are there community partnerships that you're engaged in? If you're a community organization, are there campus partnerships you're engaged in? We'd love to know. But Priscilla, I'm going to pass it back to you to talk a little bit for folks who maybe aren't from a rape crisis center to learn about those.
Thanks, Ashley. Yeah, so for folks that are unfamiliar with Rape Crisis Center advocates, here are some of the services that they can provide for prevention, intervention, and outreach. So some of the things that Angelina had shared with us, right? Confidential crisis intervention. So that's something that is, she mentioned is one of the really most important features of having an advocate on campus, right? Having someone that you can share this information with confidentially, that doesn't have that requirement of reporting for Title IX, whether or not the person wants to, right? Once they report it to someone who is responsible for Title IX reporting, that individual would have to report it on a campus. But a confidential crisis intervention advocate does not have that same reporting duty. We kind of reviewed some of these before, right? Reporting options. It gives the person that space where they can talk about what their options are without having to feel like they don't have choices. And they can find those options out before they're stuck in a situation where they no longer have the power to decide whether or not they want to report or what is going to happen with the reporting process. They can be involved in safety planning accompaniments. So that can be hospital accompaniments if the person is in need of a sexual assault response team exam, like a forensic exam. They can also do court accompaniments, follow-up. So just, checking in on that individual, making sure that, things are going okay, if they need any more assistance, or if they just need that additional support of knowing that there's someone there who's checking in on them. They can offer support groups. Training for administrative staff is super important as well. So like Angelina had also mentioned, right, getting involved with all of the different staff members and making sure that everyone's kind of on the same page. Providing referrals and prevention education. Yeah, like we've kind of already covered a lot of these things. So these are all really important things that it's really great to have a rape crisis center advocate on your campus or someone that's affiliated with the campus. So you have someone that you can go to and reach out to for these types of supports and services. And then it looks like we have another audience poll. So have you connected with your local rape crisis center? Or if you are a rape crisis center, have you made contact with your local campus? So it looks like we're getting a lot of folks who are saying, yes, there's an active partnership. A couple of folks are saying contacts limited. One person saying my local what now? So, right, really in the beginning stages of kind of trying to figure out who to partner with and what that partnership looks like. But it looks like we have a nice mix of folks who are kind of in the beginning stages and folks who really already have an active partnership and are kind of maybe looking for ways that partnership can grow a little bit more. So thank you all for participating in that. Okay. And then if you want to learn more about your local rape crisis center, you can go to our website on Valor. And if you go to the Get Help option, that is where you can search for your local area and it will give you a listing of your local rape crisis center. And we'll pop that in the chat as well. So Ashley, did you want to talk a little bit about moving forward?
Yeah. So, I think Angelina, you touched on all of these, but I just think no matter what kind of partnership we are looking to develop, partnerships and collaborations really depend on clear communication and coordination. And so we can start to think about how we can coordinate some of the tasks that are listed on this slide. And so, thinking about like who's at the table, who's not at the table, why are they not at the table? Is it on purpose? Is it an oversight? Like, what is the history with that? And then it's some things that we really have to establish when we're thinking about a partnership are more of like the logistical aspects, right? So like, who's the person that's going to follow up? Who's the person that's going to identify partners and actually reach out to them, let people know, hey, we're going to be meeting about this topic and we'd really love your input. Who's going to be scheduling those things? Who's going to provide materials? Like, it's this logistical stuff that I think sometimes gets lost, and then we get frustrated because we don't understand what the purpose of the collaboration or the partnership is. So I think managing the logistics can be really important. Also knowing like how are we sharing power and responsibility? Like, what is expected of our partners? Are we just wanting their input? Are we wanting them to commit to resources? And so I think, as Angelina shared, developing an MOU or some other type of agreement can really kind of lay those things out at the beginning, so things are clear. We understand that. And I love, gosh, you said so many of these things, Angelina, but like you shared that you were going to all sorts of events, right? Like you were going to any meeting that people would let you in, but you would also go to art shows. And so how are we showing up for our partners? I think that's a big one. When I was trying to partner, not just on campus, but just with community organizations, I look back and I think, was I just inviting them to like my meetings, or was I showing up at their meetings? Was I showing up at their events? Was I just expecting them to show up at ours? And so I think that goes into building that trust, building that kind of shared respect for each other and for each other's expertise. And I think, if that's kind of in our frame of mind, it's because we know that this is going to produce a greater outcome for survivors. This is going to allow us as a community to respond and not just as individual people. And how great is that? How great is it to think that no matter where a survivor is, whether they're at school or at a workplace or at a community center, that if they needed support, people would know where to send them or know who to contact. I think that that's really the aim of our community blueprint. Yeah, Angelina, did you want to say something?
Yeah, really clear communication and smart coordination is a foundation for your partnership. If you do not have the logistics down, there's chaos and your partnership, unfortunately, is going to fall apart. The best way, like when you look at all of your bullet points, because they're great bullet points on how to build this foundation, is look at how you are as a friend, right? Do you keep in contact with people? Do you show up to their events, or do you only expect them to show up to the parties that you host? Are you clear in how you feel when they hurt your feelings? Things like that. And if you look at how you are as a friend, you can kind of see how you're going to develop that partnership, because it really does have the same guidelines as developing a friendship that you do in developing these partnerships with these community partners. You really do have to have a buy-in to that campus and show up at these events and not just say, hey, I have this event, so come to mine. Or, I developed this partnership, so I'm the only decision maker. it really is a joint effort. It really, truly is a partnership. And, you know, healthy relationships is not just about intimate partners. It's about, you know, your work environment, your collaboration within the community. We look at the foundations of the things that we're educating on and use it in how we work with other individuals and other community partners. Our partnerships will only grow.
That's great. Thank you. Priscilla, if you go to the next slide, I think, you know, as we kind of wrap up and end our conversation for today, we'd love if there's anything that you're taking away from today's conversation, an idea, a thought, anything really. So we'd love to hear if there's anything like that. And then Priscilla, if you go to the next slide, we did want to leave you with some of the resources that Valor has for campus work. So we have kind of this suite. Some of them are more geared towards response and thinking about survivors' options on campus. And then we also have some that are focused more on this idea of primary prevention or comprehensive prevention. And so if you haven't accessed those, I will put those in the chat for you where you can find those. They are free to access. But I think that is pretty much what we have for you today. I just want to, again, thank Angelina so much for being willing to share your wisdom and your experience and your success, really, with working and partnering and collaborating with your local college. And I want to thank Priscilla for co-facilitating with me. Thank you, Shelby, so much for being here and supporting our tech. And thank you to our captioner. And then thank you to everyone in the audience so much for joining us today. I really hope that you took something from this conversation and look forward to that community blueprint that will be coming in the fall. Feel free also to contact us if you have any questions or follow up. I'll put my email in the chat. But I think that is going to do it for us today, unless there are any final comments or questions. We'll leave the chat open for a few minutes. And yeah, thanks, Priscilla. We do have one more web conference in this community partnership series. We also have recordings of the past ones. So if you missed any and are interested, we did one on working with faith communities, working with alcohol and drug and substance use and abuse. We did one on individuals with developmental disabilities. There's the one next week on labor. I don't know what I'm forgetting, but we do have them all there and you can find the recording. So thank you all so much. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your Tuesday and hope to see you again on a web conference soon. And thanks again, Angelina. It was a pleasure to have you here. Take care, everyone.
Thank you, Ashley. Have a good day, everyone.